Hello and welcome to Klebnar TV. My name is Josephine Zamama and I am your host. I'm also the proud owner of Confide. Confide has partnered up with Klebnar TV to bring you an 8-week series around mental health. A little bit about Confide. Confide is a space to create awareness, give support, and provide access to mental health services. And in the 8-week series, we'll be having guests that will touch on how they keep mentally healthy. So, in regards to some of the topics that we're going to touch on, firstly, we're going to start off by debunking some of the myths that people know about mental health and just creating that awareness that not everything that you hear is the truth. We will also be proudly joined by a psychologist in our early weeks just to talk about the sciences of mental health and just so we have a better understanding about some of the early signs and symptoms of common health issues that people experience, which is quite normal. And then in our later weeks, we'll start to talk about ways to keep mentally healthy. So we'll have some guests who will talk about the positives of creative arts and what it does for our mental health. And our series will then be concluded because we will bring in our doctor who will just talk about the things that we need to do generally to keep mentally healthy, because our mental health is affected by literally everything that we do in our health, from eating, sleeping, exercising. So who better to have than our GP to tell us about how to keep mentally healthy? Staying true to the fact that this is a service for Africans living in diaspora and in Africa, we just want to talk about some of the things that our community believe about mental health. Because our job at Confide is to debunk and create awareness of mental health issues. So generally, some of the myths, so I'll be reading on my phone, but some of the myths about mental health. So I've heard that one, mental health is an incurable and lifelong issue. So, first of all, mental health is not a condition. Mental health is actually what we refer to as your health of your mind. So, the same way your physical body has health issues and sometimes can be healthy is the same way your mind can be healthy. So, when we talk about illness in regards to mental health, we refer to it as mental health illness or mental health issues, because your health will be regulated depending on what's going on in your life. So if you start to experience illness, then in that period of your life, you may need to get support or treatment. So not every mental health issue is lifelong. Most people only experience mental health issues depending on what's happening in their life or as a result of something. For things that are uncurable, then there are treatments, but it's very rare to have something that is prolonged throughout your life. So that's just one thing that everybody needs to know. So if you experience a mental health breakdown or something tragic happens in your life, it's not to say you've lost your mind or all these negative things that our community say about a person who experienced difficulty mentally. You can get the support, you can feel better, and you can get back to good health. Myth number 2. People are born with mental health illness. This is a half true and half false statement. So, not all mental health illnesses are things that people are born with, but in families, you can be more susceptible to develop mental health illness. So, for example, some illnesses, such as bipolar, are things that can be passed down generation to generation. And when our psychologist comes on board, she'll touch a little bit about that. So it's not to say that if a parent of yours had this illness, you will automatically have it. But the likelihood of you developing it as you progress in life is quite higher than somebody who does not have that history in their family. So, no, you can't be born with a mental health illness, but your likelihood of developing something that someone in your family has already had is much higher than another person who doesn't have that history in their family. Myth number 3. Only certain people develop mental health issues. So this is not true. In 2001, the World Health Organization released a report saying that 450 million people in the world will develop mental health illness or experience a mental health issue. Depending on your country, you can find out the statistics. Here in Australia, it's actually 1 in 4, and I believe some states are even 1 in 3, the likelihood of developing a mental health issue or illness over your lifespan. So, and the way this can be impacted is actually four main things. Other things can impact you, but age, income, your socioeconomic status, and also your environment. So these are some of the things that actually can impact a person to experience mental health issues. Myth number 4: mental illness is caused by a person's weakness. That's not true. In mental health issues, there is no strength or weakness when it comes to mental health. The same way anybody and everybody can have a cold or experience, gastro or physical illnesses, anybody can experience that. So to say a person is weak is not a true statement, because a lot of people experience mental health issues without displaying any signs. So if somebody is actually displaying long-term signs, there are ways they can get support to alleviate some of those signs. Myth number 5. So, people with mental health issues or illness are dangerous. That is not true. It's 50-50. So, like I mentioned before, depending on the mental health issue or illness, then we can say that statement. So, for example, if somebody's just experiencing mild issues like stress and anxiety, obviously this person is not dangerous. But a person who's experiencing serious health issues, some stuff that our psychologists will mention in later series, then that person may be subject to violence. But a lot of times, what we find is that people who are actually under the influence of drugs and alcohol are more likely to be violent than a person who actually has a mental health issue. Because often, people who have mental health, like illness, things to do with bipolar, schizophrenia, they are already quite cautious about the way the world views them and how people view them. So they're always very careful in how they carry themselves. So a lot of times they would not show signs because they don't want attention around them. So often you have more likelihood of being attacked or experiencing violence from a person who's under the influence of drugs and alcohol as opposed to somebody who actually has a mental health illness, disorder, or disease. Myth number 6: mental illness is a form of intellectual disability or brain damage. So, with this myth, again, it depends on how you interpret it. But being born and having intellectual disability or brain damage does not necessarily mean a person has mental health illness. There are conditions in which a person may develop cognitive issues, but that's not to say that their mental health is not in good standing. So a lot of times you might notice that people who are living with disability, cognitive disability, these are some of the people who may struggle with just general mental health. But it's not to say that they have mental health illness, it's just they have a condition. So the same way somebody who's born and is living with disability in the sense that they're in a wheelchair and so their quality of life is altered a little bit. So that's the same thing with somebody who has a cognitive issue. So it may not be that the things that you and I do on a regular basis and we do it freely, they might have to have other things, other supports to get them to do this regularly. Myth number 7: people with mental illness can pull themselves out of it. I've heard that a lot, and it breaks my heart when people say that, because When somebody has a disease, any disease, so we're not talking just a very small mental health issue. When somebody is really struggling with a mental health condition or disease or whatever it is, you have to think about the physical illness. For example, if somebody had cancer, stage 3, stage 4, your family would be supporting you, would be providing you with whatever you need, cooking for you, cleaning for you, vice versa. So now think about somebody who is diagnosed with something quite severe and is struggling, may have to end up in hospital or is, having a care plan. Let them not be a burden. People need to understand that the same way physical health has different levels, mental health does as well. So a person cannot pick themselves up. You wouldn't ask someone who is going through chemo because of cancer to get their own stuff and to just get on with life. So when you know somebody's diagnosed with something that's probably incurable or they have a limited time to live, just be kind and know that it is a journey, that they need support. They can't live on their own and they cannot pull themselves out of it. So just be kind. I hope you've enjoyed our introduction to the 8-week series with Confide around mental health. Today, we were just talking about some of the myths about mental health, and we hope that as you follow and progress, you will learn a lot more about mental health. Thank you for tuning in to Klevnard. If you are not signed up, I would advise you to sign up so that you can follow our series. And be sure to also follow us on Confide on Facebook and on Instagram. And yeah, hope to see you soon.